Rule number one, don't open the door.
I need a little more up top and a little less down below.
Amber alert. Oh God, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. In orbit of Uranus.
It smells.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Oh no, you love me. You know you love me.
Just don't let it touch the
That's great, but give me a little more.
Why are you shooting at me?
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, and welcome out there, and Merry Christmas time almost to all of you out there in YouTube and podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast and YouTube channel where two guys get together. We talk about movies, key influences on that particular movie of the week, and then things that movie then influenced after that. We've been doing this for quite a long time now. It is totally unscripted. We don't even compare notes before we start. We just dive in and hopefully don't talk over each other too much, but it has been known to happen. If you are new to us, thanks so much for joining. We'd love to hear how you found out about us. If you wouldn't mind, leave us a comment down there. If you're on YouTube or even on your favorite podcast app of choice, that would be great. You can also give us a review. We would love a review on Apple, by the way, because that kind of helps our numbers get up and helps more people find the show. And if you're returning, do the same thing. Welcome back, but also tell us what you think and what you like. You can subscribe, ring the bell, do all the stuff that they do. My name is David. I'm here with my good friend and co-conspirator, Tim. Tim, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. That was a very jolly introduction, I must say.
Wasn't it? Wasn't I happy?
Oh my gosh, the year has flown.
What have you been doing?
By a lot. I mean, you know what? You know how it is this time of year. It's crazy.
Oh gosh. It is crazy.
Let's see. I guess I'll go ahead and just plunge right into my genre week, which is kind of what we do, especially when an episode is going to run a little long. And this one,
well,
is
you
very
finished
likely
all your shopping?
No,
me either.
I'm sure.
I'll still be there.
You're like my dad. You're out there the day before.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Oh,
go ahead.
my
Sorry.
gosh.
Sorry to interrupt. But anyway, we usually try to do, what have you done in your genre week this week?
In my genre week this week, I got around to watching a very popular movie from last year called Barbarian.
Oh, yeah. Heard that was
good. This movie got high praise. And I have to say, I'm right there with them. This is a really good movie. There is one huge gap in logic that will kind of stick with you. But if you can get past that, the rest of this movie is really, really good. It's directed by a guy named Zach Kreger. I really don't know anything about Zach. I was impressed with his directing skills, though. It stars Georgina Campbell, who you may recognize. She was in a Black Mirror episode called Hang the DJ.
Hang the DJ. I remember that. She was good.
And she is in the new version of Bird Box Barcelona as well. Okay. That's on Netflix. It's like, I guess, a Spanish version of sequel to that movie.
Maybe.
Bill Skarsgård, Pennywise himself, plays is a star in this movie as well. It also stars Justin Long, who I know from Jeepers Creepers, from Galaxy Quest. I found out later while watching this and doing a little bit of research that Zac Efron turned down the Justin Long role. And that was probably a big mistake on his part because, I don't see Zac Efron doing a lot that I've heard of.
Right.
Synopsis is: in a town for a job interview, a young woman arrives at her Airbnb rental late at night, only to find the house has been mistakenly double booked and a strange man already staying there. Against her better judgment, she decides to stay the night anyway, but soon discovers there is much more to be afraid of in the house than just the other outcasts.
Okay.
There are a number of reveals that I'm not going to spoil because people need to see this movie. I would definitely put this on our list of movies to cover on the show.
Okay.
There's some typical horror movie logic problems, but it rocked me on so many levels that I can overlook some of that, especially on the fear level. I was actually scared watching this movie.
Cool.
And that's rare for me, as you know.
That is rare. Very rare for you.
Yeah. It kind of stressed me out.
It might send me to the hospital then. I don't know if I should watch it. So
it scores 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I would say that's well deserved. So
wow.
I'll just leave it at that. Barbarian. That is what I did in my genre week.
Barbarian. My genre week was your genre just because I had the opportunity. It was weird and I did it. I went and watched a movie that when it came out was very popular. I think you even mentioned it in a Coming to Get You that we do. And then it became very popular and still gets very high praise. It's a horror movie called Talk to Me. You had said, "Oh, David, you got to see this. It's getting rave reviews. Everybody says it's the scariest thing that's ever come out." Blah 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 blah. For those of you who don't know it, it's an Australian import. It had two directors, Danny Filippo and Michael Filippo. They are brothers. They're kind of like the Duffer Brothers of Australia, I guess, sort of thing. They also wrote it with a couple of other friends. I got the impression this was their pet project, almost like an Evil Dead thing to them. Very simplistic and easy film techniques and filming locations. The basic synopsis is pretty simple. You have a group of friends who discover that you can conjure spirits, not the same spirit, multiple spirits, using an embalmed hand. It's evidently a psychic's embalmed hand that has been covered in plaster, almost like a cast. And they get hooked on this thrill of only 3 minutes at a time, but 3 minutes of spirit possession that is a great party gag that they start doing with all their friends at all these parties. But then one time it goes too far, of course, and you open the door to hell sort of thing, and bad things start happening. No real cast to point out as far as anyone we would recognize at all. All of these, I assume, are Australian because their accents are fairly heavy. There was a moment, probably about 15 minutes into it, when I was thinking, okay, if I was Tim right now, I would turn the subtitles on because I didn't understand one thing they just said in that last scene. It was so thick with accent. But I didn't. I stayed.
Shame on you.
No, don't read the movie. Watch the movie unless it's foreign. But this movie did scare me, but I think I expected a lot more out of it. It scared me in a couple of the dread scenes, and I realized that's what I've been missing and wanting is the dread and that kind of horror as opposed to the jump scare horror. We did, what was the other Justin Long we did? Drag Me to Hell?
Yeah.
This was better than that. But it was along those same kind of lines of
Is it comic like Sam is? Kind of funny?
No, there is, I mean, there's character comedy in it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's not comedy. It's what you would do to break the tension. It's a laugh line here or there kind of thing that friends would say. But it's mostly possession and body horror sort of fears. A lot of jump scares. You can tell that from the trailer. I mean, they reach out, they say, "Talk to me," and suddenly they, jerk back and their eyes turn black and the spirit takes over and all of this. But some of the twists near the end, I really compliment them. I think it was a great, I didn't do research at all, so I don't know if this was a first effort by these brothers, but if it is really good and they've got a good thing going, It has a foreign feel to it, just because I think it was filmed in Sydney or somewhere else in Australia. So, the door handles are way up here. The different things. They drive on their cars have steering wheel on the other side, that sort of thing. When they talk about, we've got to take somebody to the doctor, they go, let's go to hospital, without the sort of thing. So there's a foreign feel to it, but there's also a really modern gag to it. These kids seem really realistic. Nothing seems cliche in this or thrown out. So characterizations are really strong. But yeah, I would probably put it on our list. I would recommend it to you to put on the list, because I think it would be one that we would enjoy doing together and looking at. So.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot recently that could make the list. There's a lot of Australian stuff coming out that I really like. You mentioned it. I don't know if Australia is just all of a sudden becoming a big influence in the horror industry, but
yeah.
I did cover Talk to Me and Coming to Get You with. I also did another movie called Run Rabbit Run, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
And
title.
Run Rabbit Run went directly to Netflix, whereas Talk to Me went direct to theaters. Both were produced by A24, or not produced, but distributed. So A24 picked these up and bought them, or whatever, the rights to them for America.
Right.
And A24 has a pretty good eye for this kind of stuff. I haven't watched either one yet, but I'm looking forward to both.
Yeah. I would advise you. Yeah, when pick up Talk to Me, look at it, see what you think. It's really good. And the segue coming out of that is, of course, the thing that did scare me about it was this: are we being possessed, and did we open a door? So their perception starts really changing. They start seeing things. Everything from, is there something in the closet, or hearing a banging on the door and a banging on the door and a banging on the door, and you go to open the door and there's nothing there. It's that kind of scares that are we losing our minds kind of perception, which is kind of where we go with what I think King wanted with this, although it gets very cosmic and crazy and weird.
It's like through if we're going on to the topic of the week, as far as segues, I mean, we're both talking about horror movies, so it kind of makes sense that this is the topic.
It's scary. Yeah.
We're going to be covering a little movie. Do I not have? Oh, know what? I guess I didn't do the posters. Oh, yeah. No.
Oh, and it's not little. It's a double feature, dude.
It is a double feature.
We're blowing it out for Christmas.
We're covering 2017's It and 2019's It Chapter 2. Before I continue, we are going into I'm going to just throw a picture up because I can't seem to find the posters. I thought I had the posters, but I will find them in just a second. This Christmas, we decided to revisit Stephen King on a more modern level, and we went to the 21st century films as opposed to the ones that we did from the 20th century a few years back. We did Salem's Lot, Carrie, and Creepshow. This year we did The Mist, Gerald's Game, and It, both It movies. I started thinking about it today in the shower, as I do my best thinking, and realized that we did a book from each decade, from different decades, because The Mist was written in the 70s, published in 1980. Gerald's Game was written in the 90s, published in 92, and It was written smack dab in the middle of the 80s, 1986. I remember that because that was a big year for King. Like 4 novels, I think, came out that year. It, Misery, Eyes of the Dragon, and Tommyknockers all came out that year.
Well, 3 novels and Tommyknockers. So, yeah.
What do you mean? Oh, and Tommy.
Because it sucks.
Tommyknockers is not that great. No.
No.
So, how to describe? I guess I will just start with a synopsis, Basically, this was also a miniseries, obviously in 1990 as well. The miniseries in the 90s is a little more faithful to the book as far as going back and forth in time. The book is set in the 50s and the 80s. This is set in the late 80s and the 20 teens, so that it kind of modernizes, brings everything up to speed a little bit closer to our age. The story is about a group of 5 kids. Well, actually, it's more than 5 kids, isn't it? How many are there? 6?
7 altogether.
Altogether 7.
Yeah.
They kind of bond because they're bullied by Henry Bowers and his gang. They form their own little gang that ends up being called the Losers Club. And they live in a town called Derry, where mysteriously every 27 years, a lot of weird deaths start happening, whether they be from a giant accident or whether they be from abductions or whether they be from murders or all of the above. Turns out that there is a malevolent force. They refer to it as it, that could potentially be from outer space or another world living beneath Derry, and it hibernates every 27 years and comes out and manifests itself in your deepest, darkest fear. The primary manifestation, of course, is a clown called Pennywise. Pennywise, basically, we found out Richie Tozier's the comedic clown of the Losers Club's fear is of clowns. Very similar to someone I think that may be co-hosting this podcast with me.
Yes, because they're evil, demonic creatures. Yes.
This clown, in order to have somebody play the creature, they have Pennywise be the most common manifestation. And in the original miniseries of the 90s, it was, of course, played by Tim Curry, very famously. In this version, it is played by Skarsgård. What's his name? I get those Skarsgård brothers mixed up.
This is Bill. This is the same one as Barbarian. This is Bill Skarsgård.
Right. Bill. Okay. Bill. I get him confused with the guy that's on True Blood. And to me, I think he's just as good as Tim Curry. To me, he's extremely good at playing Pennywise. And then, of course, like I said, we're covering both films. This film deals with them as the first film deals with them as kids. The second film deals with them as adults. They think they defeat him as a child, but really they just wound him and send him back underground for 27 years. It turns out he comes back in their adult lives and they have to meet up again. Most of them have forgotten what had happened, but slowly they start remembering, so much so that one of them commits suicide. I've jumped around a lot because this is a huge, huge story. Am I leaving anything out that we cannot go from here?
No, I think that's as far as the synopsis goes. I mean, and for anybody out there, we will spoil everything too. This is by no means a spoiler-free podcast or YouTube show. And I think that covers it pretty much. I mean, there's a lot to bite off and chew on here.
There's my posters.
Sort of thing. But I mean, I guess the best way, in my opinion, to start would be, from the beginning, in that, how did we first come to the novel? Because the novel is the key, the biggest key to this, these two films and the miniseries as well. I will say before we get into it that I did go back. So I watched both the movies and then I went back and watched the miniseries again. And we had I think it was just like a month or a couple of months ago, we had both seen the Pennywise documentary, the documentary of the original miniseries. And it was interesting to see it again after seeing that documentary and hearing how they struggle with the second half and how the director ended up having to write it, sort of thing, basically, all of that. And in doing research on these movies, it was interesting that if you look at reviews and comments, and even on IMDb, the trivia and the behind the scenes on it, the first movie, they have no clue that they're doing a second one. They keep thinking, they talk about scenes that were edited and cut, and hopefully they'll be in either a sequel or the director's cut, yada, yada. And then, some of them that they're mentioning are in the sequel, are in chapter 2. So that was, I thought, interesting. I read this book when it came out and loved it.
It's a doorstop.
Really, yeah. It's huge.
It's gigantic.
But I really, really liked it. I liked it from the characters. I liked it from the abuse and the horrible, family lives of all these people, which King does really well and gives them all their own unique little twists and turns. And mostly, I loved the storytelling. I remember thinking, okay, this is his not sequel, but this is as close to literature as The Stand. This is him back doing what he does best, these grand opus storytelling things. It's not the small little Misery. It's not the small little Cujo, these singular kind of stories. This is massive and huge and big, like The Stand. And I remember reading it and loving it and liking it. But what I like most, and what I will probably, get on my soapbox for in this one, is what I liked most in the miniseries too, which was cutting back and forth. It works so well, and it works so well in chapter 2 of this. I'm going, why isn't it at all in the first one? I was going, it really needed it really badly. In my opinion. But I loved the way he ended chapters, and suddenly you were like right on a cliffhanger, and it was huge, and it was like, and then Pennywise ... and you turn the page and it's 27 years earlier and you're back with the kids and you're going, oh my God, I got to read through this chapter just to find out what happened to Ben or whatever.
Right.
I loved it. I loved that part of it. Yes.
So
what about you? You read it when it came out, I guarantee.
Yeah, I was trying to place it because I left Morristown briefly in the 80s for about 6 months and went to Atlanta. And I'm pretty sure that's where I read the Tommyknockers. I may have already read it before I went down there. Okay. Because like I said, all of this stuff happened. All of these things came out in 86. And back then I was reading his books the minute they came out.
Yes.
Yeah. And
the addiction had already started.
And as you said, this is one of those that took a long time to read. I want to say it was like 1,200 pages, maybe even more.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very large book. Now you can read it on an electronic device much easier. Back then you had to hold that 20-pound thing or whatever, however much it weighed. I'm like, I like you, really like the book. I love how they go back and forth because he would have little cliffhangers on each chapter. Another thing I identified with a lot, as I'm sure you did, is that it was King's childhood, which was further back than us, but close enough that the monsters that manifested and scared the kids were monsters we knew. They were monsters from the Universal horror movies. They were, Rodan, the
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
I think Billy Goat's Gruff was in there somewhere, as well as like the Mummy or Dracula, or actually it was a Teenage Werewolf, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Teenage Werewolf. In this one, they modernize it a little bit. They make Eddie's a leper, and Eddie's germophobic thanks to his overbearing mother. I mean, I think all of the choices they made in modernizing this were spot on. I didn't have a problem with it at all. Very much like when I talk about Interview with the Vampire. If I had to, I mean, obviously we're talking about two movies, and I guess we're talking about the first one first. To me, it's the superior of the two. I think, honestly, this movie, it blew people away when it came out. This was a very huge movie. And as far as classic modern horror movies, I'm very glad that we're doing this at Christmas because to me, this is a very, very good movie. I was kind of blown away by how effortlessly it seems directed. It's very Spielbergian. It's like if Spielberg did a horror movie, this is kind of what it would be like to me. And I've never heard of Andrew Machete, and I don't think anyone else has. And he really hasn't done a lot else. He did that new movie, The Flash, which I don't really care about because I'm not a big DC Heroes movie.
Right.
I think it did well. I mean, he obviously landed the gig from directing this.
Mm-hmm.
He directed before this a movie called Mama in 2013. Have you ever heard or seen it?
I have heard of it. That's the one with Jennifer Lawrence. Right?
No, that's Mother.
Yeah, that's Mother.
That's Aronofsky, I think.
I have not seen Mama.
Okay. Yeah, so I've not seen that. He's Argentinian. So I'm like,
yes,
where did this guy come from? Then I find out his wife was a producer and I guess knew of his talents and wanted him on this or tried to get this project for him. After this movie, he was set to direct The Mummy, the version with Tom Cruise. And left due to creative differences.
Doesn't surprise me.
I guess we could leave it at that. I mean, I suspect that Cruise was the problem, but I mean, if you've seen the movie It, I think I would trust this guy because, again, I mean, what do you think of this movie? What was your first impression? Did you see it in a theater?
Yes, I saw this in the theater, but I don't. It was very weird. We'll get to it when we get to chapter 2. Anyway, I saw this in the theater. I liked it. I felt the same way on this rewatch because it's only the second time I've watched it.
Same.
I think if you don't know the novel, you don't follow it as well. I think there's a lot that's unsaid in this movie. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think knowledge of the novel, it's not required to get the scares or to enjoy this movie, but it definitely, there's a lot that's filled in the novel that's not in this. Or the changes and why he did the changes or whatever. I still don't understand why the changes. I don't get the justification for the time change of setting it in the 80s, other than Stranger Things, rather than setting it in the 60s or the 50s, like the original. I do know from research that there was an original script that a guy was directing, and he had essentially written the script for it, and they were going to go with it, and he ended up getting off the project. And they basically gave it to Machete and said, "You can do this." He said, "Well, I can only do it if I make changes." So like in the original script that the guy had done, instead of a rock fight, it was a fireworks fight. They were fighting with fireworks and firecrackers and Roman candles and all of that. And he said, no, Stephen King's idea is much better. It's a rock fight. It's more simplistic. It works better, yada, yada. So he restored a lot of the book stuff to it, but kept, I guess, maybe the date change was already there. The updated time frame was already there, so he did that, I guess. I mean, and again, I wasn't a kid in the 80s, so I can't relate. But there's a big difference in, Ben on his bike in the 50s and Ben on his bike in the 80s, to me.
Why?
I didn't see the 80s as a big bike time.
Oh, yeah. I was always riding a bike in the 80s.
In the 80s?
Yes.
Okay. Sure. All right.
Well,
I wasn't.
I mean, I guess by the time I started doing theater in the early 80s, I had stopped riding bikes. But in the late 70s and 1980 and 81, I was riding bikes to get around. I mean, I wasn't driving yet.
Right, but I just don't remember. I mean, that was my college and post-college decade, and I don't remember seeing kids on bikes like I did when I was a kid, and seeing them outside the bookstore.
Well, and we were young, we were older, but I mean, I would say our younger counterparts were on bikes.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, because you couldn't drive. That was your way to get around.
So
I did notice that they left the whole high hole silver in there, which is very dated. I mean, that's
that doesn't work.
Yeah, that was unusual.
I do agree with you, though. I think he has a really great style.
Yeah,
his direction is impeccable all the way through this. The integration of the practical effects, the lighting, his use of the camera itself, all those slow pans down the street, of the kids, and seeing the waving missing kids posters in the foreground kind of thing, very Spielbergian. Yes, I could agree with that. Also, very another key I had for it was like Bradbury. It's a very something wicked this way comes feel to the town, to Derry, but yeah, I agree. I think Muschietti did a great job in directing it. I
think it's a sum of all parts. I mean, casting is huge in this, and whoever cast this did a fantastic job. Yes. I mean, everybody in this movie is good.
Both movies.
Right.
Both movies. There is not one character, even the old lady that Beverly goes and has tea with. Everybody cast in these two movies is outstanding.
Right.
The 80s pharmacist daughter and then her grown-up self.
Greta.
Both of them are just well cast. Everybody is. Especially Beverly. Beverly is Jessica Chastain in the second one, and then whatever her name is in the younger self. She's outstanding.
Yeah, she looks like she could be Elizabeth Olsen's younger sister or something.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
She looks a lot like she could grow up to play Wanda in the Avengers.
Baby Wanda.
Yeah. Before we head on to scenes, I wanted to mention, we mentioned that Andy Muschietti directed it and was set to go on to do The Mummy, did not. Now it has done The Flash. He doesn't do many projects very often, but like I said, he's got some clout because of this film. Other people were scheduled to direct this movie. The Duffer Brothers originally wanted to direct this movie, but they were overlooked because they were not established enough yet at the time. Had we known Stranger Things was going to happen, wow. Just imagine had they done this. But also, I like to flip it to the devil's advocate and say, had they done this, would they have done Stranger Things? Probably not.
Probably not. I agree with that.
So it's good and bad that the Duffer Brothers did not get this project. Another person that was set and interested in doing an adaptation of this was Guillermo del Toro. His workload just wouldn't allow it. And I don't know what I would think of a Del Toro version of this. I think it would be vastly different.
I think it would be vastly different. I don't think and there's nothing wrong. I just think culturally, he is not who I would immediately think of as Americana. And being able to portray that. And that's such a huge part of this story is kids growing up in America in the quote, whatever decade it's done, unquote, kind of thing. And I don't know if he would have those sympathies and those instincts.
Yeah, he's very good at traveling between worlds and mysticism. But this movie is ground in reality. And that's what makes it so scary. So that's not his forte.
And that's one thing that I will say that Muschietti actually did very well is the removal of a lot of the mysticism in the second half that was in the book that threw you off. Because I still remember reading the end of this book going, seriously? That's how you ended it? Jesus Christ, that's a terrible So,
yeah, it's not got a great book. I mean, great ending. I think he may have still been drinking at the time. I want to say his last
Tommy Knockers, you said, came out after this. So
and Tommy Knockers was his last book before he hit rock bottom and got sober. Right. Yeah.
So,
because there's some things in the book that are not great, and they intentionally leave them out of the movie, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, it was very interesting in trying to compare it because I did miss the Universal monsters, and I would have liked even an homage to even one of them, because I think it also would have been an homage maybe to Salem's Lot as well, kind of thing. But they didn't, and I thought that was a miss but I do like a lot of his editing, what he took out or didn't belabor or whatever. I mean, the implied abuse of Beverly was just enough to make you ick and feel bad and everything else. You didn't need anything more graphic than that. I'm
not through with directors.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Other than Del Toro and the Duffer Brothers, a man named Cary Joy Fukunaga was set to direct. I am not familiar with him. He is a well-known, I guess you would say, television or HBO director. He did The Alienist, and he did True Detective and things like that. They're really well respected. He dropped out after years of pre-production due to a difference in artistic vision. In consequence, what the intended MPAA rating was intended to be, with Fukunaga wanting the film to be NC-17. The studio was not willing to go past an R rating. He said he was aiming for a version that was closer to The Shining in tone and style. So they parted ways because of difference in artistic vision. And then our favorite also was desperate to get this movie. Mike Flanagan was in talks with studio to direct it when Fukunaga dropped out, but somehow that fell through. I'm guessing because he was not as well established also at the time.
Could be.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Because I think Mike Flanagan could have done this movie justice as well. Andy got the movie and began filming in the summer of 2016. So all of this stuff happened prior, probably maybe 3 to 5 years prior. And then Andy began shooting in 2016. It was written by Chase Palmer, also Fukunaga, who wrote No Time to Die, the James Bond movie, Gary Dauberman, who did the Annabelle series, and the Salem's Lot that's still in limbo out there. And of course, Stephen King, who the book was the basis for. So Fukunaga's stuff, some of his stuff still in this movie, but like you said, Andy rewrote the script. It's the highest grossing Stephen King adaptation to date. And it shows. I think it's a gorgeous movie.
I do.
But this movie grossed $123 million on its opening weekend. It is the second largest R-rated film to open ever, only behind Deadpool.
Okay.
The box office also says it would have, the analysts also say it would have they estimate more, but there was Hurricane Irma going on, which closed significant numbers of theaters down south. So it could have made even more. But highest, in 8 days of its release, it became the highest grossing September release of all time and the highest grossing horror movie of all time. Big movie, big Christmas movie.
Merry Christmas.
But 2017 was sort of a resurgence of horror in films. That was also the year that Get Out came out, another hugely popular and very good movie, but also movies like Split, Annabelle, Creation, Jigsaw, It Comes at Night, which I like a lot, and Happy Death Day. All of those came out in 2017. That's when we started beginning to see this resurgence in a love of horror movies.
Yeah.
Or what I would say anyway, in the 21st century. It has now since grossed over 7 million worldwide. Highest grossing R-rated film of all time.
Okay.
So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Scenes?
I guess I have 3 that are big standouts in this one. The first one is, of course, Georgie.
Of course.
That is a very very iconic scene in the book. It's very iconic in the miniseries. It's very iconic here. Well done here. I think
what stands out to you most in that scene? Not that picture of him biting Georgie's arm beside me.
No, the three things that work in that scene for me are the suspense of Georgie approaching the storm drain.
Right.
And I think Muschietti was smart to have the cat, who this cat is kind of just watching everything that's going on just from a porch nearby in the rain. I thought that was really kind of cool because it kind of was, he's us. We're just watching. But then the third element would be Pennywise appearance, just the eyes first, and that voice, that really innocent, hello, Georgie. It's just so nice.
It's quiet, his performance. His performance blows me away.
Brilliant. And just now we're not friends and we're not strangers, are we? It's really good. And it's what clowns do. People don't know because they've got a whole Illuminati thing over them, but that's what clowns do when they eat children. And it happens.
What about when he would be like talking and being like the friendly clown, but then all of a sudden he would just stop and stare and not make any indication of anything.
And drool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like he was frozen, and you're like, holy fuck, man, something weird just happened, and I'm not sure what.
Right. That's what made it work. And again, and I think, okay, broad topic, but I think Muschietti lost that in doing the sequel. He lost a lot of the subtlety and the dread and this fear in Pennywise and went for the jump scares. And I think what makes this scene work so well are those moments. And we're Georgie. We're going, what the hell just happened? Should I reach? Okay, I got to go now. Because we think it's odd because it's odd. That's why when we get to it, one of my favorite scenes in the second one is odd. It's different. It's not what we expect. And not just a jump scare. But yeah, Georgie.
But I mean, this is one of those scenes I think you could do like an entire episode on anatomy of a scene, because everything about this scene it blows me away, from him starting out the door and watching the boat go down the water, up until his arm getting ripped off and him like crawling into the street and that long hand
trying to get away,
creeping out of the out of the sewer, but they don't show it long at all. They barely show that hand coming out of the sewer before they cut away to the cat or the old woman. And then the next thing you see is him being pulled in from like a face ground level. And I mean, everything about that
just
scene,
looking, and all you see is the water in the street with blood in it.
Just a little bit of blood in it, like Jaws, which it is. It's a Jaws key, actually, now that I think about it. But So all right, that's one scene, and I'm with you on that one all the way.
Okay, my second one then would be the library with Ben. The whole thing, the way he sets it up, the exterior, the whole tracking up to Ben, watching the slam down of the library and giving him the books, him doing the research, and if you're smart enough or want to rewatch, you can see stuff that he's reading that is part of the plot and part of the story and that sort of thing. Pennywise in the background, and then the balloon floating by, and then the whole headless burned body chasing him, and then the jump scare at the end of that. All of that sequence.
What's the jump scare at the end? I don't remember.
He's running away from the body down the hallway, and you think, oh, he's got away, and he turns around and runs right into Pennywise.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then he runs around the corner, and it's the lady going, what are you doing?
The librarian. Yeah.
So I thought the pacing of that scene, the setup of Ben himself, because right after that's when we get the abuse scene. We get the Bowers guys. And I thought that worked really, really well. It was very scary. It was very unique. Just seeing that egg on the edge of the chair of the stairs, I'm going, why would you pick it up? Don't pick up the egg. There shouldn't be an egg there to begin with. So, that would be my second.
Okay. I would have to say one of the scenes, well, anything with the kids just blows me away because they're all such talented actors. But the whole uniting of them in the rock fight is one of my favorite things because you've literally got Bowers and Hochstetter and all those creeps cutting Ben, carving their initials into Ben. His stomach. He gets the H in there, and then Ben breaks away. I can't remember how he gets loose. And they flip him over the.
He nuts him and then jumps over.
Yeah, he jumps over, tumbles down the thing. They follow him. He runs and ends up stumbling upon the losers gang down there playing in the creek or whatever.
The Barons. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Barons. And all of a sudden, it's the losers versus the Henry Bowers gang and the rock fight. And I mean, they are getting hit in the head with rocks. Man, it could not feel good. It kind of made me think maybe that's what's wrong with Henry and why he ended up crazy because he got hit by too many rocks.
Well, and wait, slight correction, isn't the rock fight with Mike, not with Ben? Because it's Mike who is being threatened by Bowers at the edge of the stream, and that's when Beverly throws the rock.
Oh, I'm sorry. You may be right. They end up being friends with, I may have jumped the gun. They end up being friends with Ben, and then it's when they're all finally united with Mike that the rock fight happens.
Correct.
But somehow Mike ends up down there with them in the Barrens.
Well, Ben ends up running there because he's being chased by Bowers and the knife and everything else. And they get away, I think, using the bikes. They get away because remember, they have to go to the pharmacy to patch up Ben.
To patch Ben up. You're right. And
that's when they meet Beverly for the first time because she is at the pharmacy.
She pays she distracts the pharmacist so they can steal the supplies because they don't have any money. Right.
And then later on, Mike is being chased because he's the only black kid in town, basically.
Right. And they're like ready to kill him.
Oh, they're going to kill him. That's why
they're like going to bash his head in with a rock. And he somehow escapes. And that's when they have the rock fight. Okay. I just can't remember. Those scenes are very similar, I guess, because both of them involve them running away from Henry Bowers.
And both of them, to me, were setups of this is how the person joins the Losers Club.
And that's the reason the scene is so important to me, because it is the unification of the group.
Yeah. And I think both of those scenes do work. I think it's very impressionable of literally carving your freaking initials into this kid's stomach.
Yeah.
And what made it even worse was he looks up and a car drives by with old people and you think they'll help him or stop these bullies. And instead they just drive by and then you see a red balloon in the back of the car. And you're going, what? Why didn't they stop? Yeah. So I understand the unification of the Losers Club is a good scene. Mm-hmm. Both those scenes are.
Yeah.
I think my last favorite from the first one is Beverly's scene in the bathroom.
I was going to say that too.
It's
not necessarily
horrible.
It is, but it's not necessarily the hair coming out and attacking her. It's all the blood and her father not being able to see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, she is literally drenched. The whole room is drenched in blood and he doesn't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And he gets away with this kind of puberty sort of thing because when we meet Bev at the pharmacy, she is looking at the whole wall of feminine products and not being able to decide because her mom's not there, obviously, and she doesn't know. And or we get the impression no one's ever guided her on this. Yada,
I mean,
yada.
how much can you tell in one shot of film?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's so well done. And then, the bathroom is like her refuge, obviously. That's where she goes to hide from daddy, kind of thing. And it betrays her, and it's horrible. And the way they do that whole sequence, like you said, it's her picking the thing, and then it's all the things grabbing her, and then it's blood literally gushing everywhere, a la The Shining, just everywhere. And she is totally covered. And then going to tell the guys the next day, and they come and they see it. Dad doesn't, but they do, and they help her clean it.
Right. Because Bill says they have to clean it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it kind of leads to another one of my issues with the movie is there's really no explanation. Why don't the adults see things? They don't even have one line to cover that in both movies. Of why do old people drive by and ignore bullies obviously physically assaulting some kid? Why didn't dad see the blood? Why does is it just in her mind that the apartment looks all nice and normal like she remembers it, but it's really decrepit and old and everything else? Nobody else sees that?
Well, they touch on it, if I remember right, and it has been a very long time since I read this book, so I can't remember exact moments that are true, just essence of it. And honestly, if you boil that book down to its essence, as far as the kids part, I think he captures it perfectly in this movie.
Perfectly agreed.
Because obviously you can't direct a 5.5 hour movie just on the first half of this book or whatever. I guess the hair coming out of the sink was because she had cut her hair in defiance of her father. That was like, and then Pennywise turns that around and turns it into a fear. As far as any other scenes, any of the scenes with the kids together, I mean, they're so good together. And even like the funny things, like he does add a little bit of humor, which is not overboard, like Sam Raimi, like the scene where there's 3 doors and one says, not so scary, very scary, very, very scary, or whatever. Like, was that in the book? I do not remember if that's in the book.
I do not remember that in the book, but it might be. And if you're out there listening or watching, let us know if it is, because I did not research enough to remember that. I do think that, to my point, what I was saying was they got away with that in the miniseries, and I think in the book too. Like I said, I'm like you, I haven't read it in decades. But I think, but Mike, the librarian adult, can explain the fact that parents don't see it. The adults don't see it. It's the same thing as when we were kids, this happened and the adults didn't see it. It's like Pennywise has a force. But if we're just getting this original movie just from the kid's point of view, then we don't have any explanation for any of that.
No. And I got distracted. I meant to get back to that. If I'm not mistaken, the novel, very much like Salem's Lot, very much like Castle Rock, there's an underlying thing about Derry that is evil, or that, that turns a blind eye towards something happening, like kids getting beat up or parental abuse. And I think he touches lightly on it when that car does drive by and does nothing. All of a sudden, you see a red balloon in the back window.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think I love the way he did that.
Yes, I love again, if you're not talking about scenes, but just in structural, any of Pennywise's appearances in this first movie are great. Him just being on the edge of that Neibolt Street house that Eddie sees, and then suddenly, first you see, or him appearing in the slideshow
in the film,
and just
it is a slideshow. You're right.
The one singular red balloon floating behind Ben in the library, kind of thing. These kind of things before we see Pennywise do his boo jump scare thing are great and very well done all the way through it. I did not like the climax to this as much as I remembered liking it when I first saw it. the whole, now we're going down the rope, and then we're going to push Henry Bowers in, and now we're going in the sewers, and now we're going, there's Bevy, and she's floating, and now we have to do the big fight. And it wasn't like, I guess because A, I've read the novel, and B, I knew there was a sequel I'm getting ready to watch right after this, I wasn't invested in the moment. I was kind of
tried to go back in time because I'm fairly certain I didn't see either one of these in the theater, but I did see them the minute they hit streaming or DVD.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, he's got to do another movie. They can't end it here.
Right.
Because it does feel unfinished.
Well, and but it does have closure.
It has closure, but but we've read the book and we know there's more.
Right. That's why I do like, so I guess I don't like the ending. I didn't like the final battle with Pennywise and him doing his flip over and falling into the chasm. And we think, oh, we've won kind of thing. I did like the circle of them at the end and the cutting the hand and the whole, let's make a pact. If it ever comes back, we'll be here, that sort of thing. I liked all of that. And I thought that's very true to the novel. It's also very true to these characters. It worked really well.
They barter for Bill's life. He says he will leave them alone if he can have Bill to eat.
Yes.
And Bill sacrifices himself and says, let him take me. You guys go on. And they fight for him. And that's like the climax, pretty much.
And I understand he did not give Bev the slingshot and didn't do any of that from the novel or from the miniseries because it's the 80s now. Kids didn't run around with freaking slingshots in the 80s. So that made sense that they cut that, although I kind of liked it. And the fact that it was something that they could then later on when they're adults come back and actually find the slingshot and find the silver piece and all of that. I thought that was, and the silver being, same thing, it kills werewolves, sort of childlike innocence of a belief system. But I did
anything with them down in the sewers too. I just realized the scene, if we're talking about scenes, like when they're talking about gray water and they find Betty Ransom or whatever her name is, Ransom's tennis shoe.
Yeah.
And he finds Georgie's raincoat at the end too, at the very end of it.
And then we kill, what's his name? One of Bauer's kids, but we don't really know why.
It's Patrick Hochstadter. That I really like that actor. He was in the new version of The Stand.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah. He's got, I don't know, some je ne sais quoi that I think translates to being a good actor. He's very short-lived in this. He looks a little bit like Dave Grohl.
Yes.
But in The Stand, he plays Harold Lauder, and he has shorter hair, but he's just as evil.
Yep.
His scene, I mean, he gets killed by Pennywise down in the sewers too. I guess it's when they're after them, when Ben maybe escaped. I can't remember. It's one of the times when they're running from the gang in the sewers.
He's got the hairspray and the lighter. That's his weapon.
And you know what? You're right, because it's when Henry Bauer loses his knife and he says, my dad will kill me if I don't find that. Go get him. And he sends the other three after them in the sewers. That's kid playing Ben. Henry Bowers.
Yeah, the kid playing him, not so much the adult, but the kid playing him, man, he's much better than, Stand By Me or any of the other bullies. Yeah, any of the other bullies. He's a piece of work.
He is. I guess we could go ahead and let me see if I have anything else. I've got a note that Pennywise's costume in the film is much more faithful to the description in the novel in comparison to the Tim Curry costume of the miniseries, including the orange pom-poms on the silver suit.
Yeah. And this idea was brilliant. The makeup with the twisted smile kind of thing going into his eyes. That was really a cool design choice,
I agree.
I thought, for Pennywise.
It's this one. Oh, well, I'm getting into the movie, the second movie. Let's do cast because we're going to run along. So, and then we've got two whole casts.
Yeah.
Wow. Jaden Martell played Bill Denbrough. He is stuttering Bill from the book. He has a stutter as a child.
Yeah.
Jaden Martell, I think he's a fantastic actor. And for those of you that have heard me get on my soapbox before about Mr. Harrigan's Phone, he is the young man that stars in that movie as well.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
He's great. He's one of not all of these actors are doing a lot. He's doing a lot, and so is Sophia, the girl that plays Bev.
Which she should. She's brilliant.
I also have that Jaden was in Knives Out. I have not seen that.
Okay.
Jeremy Ray Taylor played Ben Hanscom. I don't know if you realize this, but he is from Bluff City, Tennessee.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. It's between Johnson City and Bristol. It's up there where we grew up. Pretty much.
Exactly where it is. Yes.
Yeah. He's great as Ben Hanscom. I don't really have much else. He auditioned for the part and was thrilled, of course, to get it. Sophia Lillis played Beverly Marsh. She is the most established, I would say, of all of the kids as far as
I'd say Wolfhard is.
Do what now?
I'd say Wolfhard is the most established out there.
Maybe. But as far as background, Sophia, she was in Asteroid City, which you recently watched. She's in Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, and she was in a movie I watched called Uncle Frank. She starred in with Paul Bettany. She's great in that, by the way.
Okay.
Somehow I have lost it. But if I'm not mistaken, she went to an acting place like Strasbourg. I mean, she went to become an actress as a young child to one of these major.
Oh, so you mean she has the most cred, meaning she has the most experience?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now the only other person considered for this role was Chloe Grace Moretz. However, this spent so much time in development hell, as I mentioned earlier. Chloe aged out of it. She could no longer play that age. So it ended up going to Sophia. Now, as you mentioned, Finn Wolfhard plays Richie Tozier. Now, he's the most recognizable out of everyone, for sure, because he is in Stranger Things, and we have seen him in, 5 seasons now? So he's been around the block. I just read that he's also in Del Toro's Pinocchio, which I have not seen.
I haven't either, but I've heard good things about it. So, it's Del Toro. So
yeah,
I doubt it'll be bad.
Chosen Jacobs is Mike Hanlon. I think out of all of the kids, he is the one that looks the most like his adult counterpart. I was amazed at how much they looked alike.
Yes.
He, along with Bill Skarsgård, went on to be in the Castle Rock television show.
Okay.
So they have that in common. Like I said, a lot of these kids don't have large resumes, though. Jack Dylan Grazier played Eddie Kasparak. I think he's fantastic. He reminds me of Eddie in the book. He has been in the Shazam movies. I'm not sure if he's the lead in those or not, because I've not seen them. And then Wyatt Olaf plays Stanley Uris. Stanley is the Jewish member of the gang that is haunted by the strange picture in his father, the rabbi's office.
Or whatever.
Yeah, she is creepy. I have in my notes that he played young Peter Quill in the Guardians 2 movie. So he's been in a Marvel movie. The biggest... ironically enough, the biggest star in this movie is not that big, and it's Bill Skarsgård. He's getting big now because of this part. He was in, as I mentioned earlier, Barbarian and in Castle Rock, but he only has 4 minutes of dialogue in this entire film, and he steals the show. I mean, he is every time he is on screen, he steals it.
Yeah,
and that's the way it should be. It really should be.
Of course, he's the villain, and he's a presence, no matter what. You know, Curry was the same way. You know, totally different interpretations of this character, but both of them are very scary. Mostly, why? Because they're playing demons.
Clowns, which David hates.
Clowns are demons. They really are.
There were some other people in line to play Pennywise before Bill landed the part. One of them was Hugo Weaving. I would have been curious to see that.
Yeah.
You know, that's Mr. Smith from The Matrix.
Agent Smith, yes.
Agent Smith, yeah. But there was also a guy that I do not know very well named Will Poulter, who was in probably closest to getting this part. He played Mark in Midsommar, the one who disappears.
Yeah, he would be great. He was,
and the guy comes back wearing his face.
Yeah.
That guy.
That would have been interesting to see him do that.
Well, he left this project. I guess he got tired of it being in limbo because, like I said, it took a while to get off the ground. So Skarsgård eventually got the role, reportedly due to his ability to play a more fun and childlike Pennywise, as opposed to Poulter, who evidently fell short. Weaving definitely fell short of that.
Yeah, I think the same thing would happen with Weaving. You said just exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, they could play creepy really well, but Bill could do both, and that's what got him the part, and it's what got Tim Curry the part too. I'm sure. Tim Curry was offered the chance to reprise the role. Did you know that?
No.
Why he turned it down.
Do that? Good, smart.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, he has had a stroke or something. He's in a wheelchair, so I'm not really sure how well he was 5 years ago, whenever it was they made this. So I'm not sure he would have been able to. But it's nice that they offered it to him. Someone else was offered this role too that kind of takes me by surprise, and it's Ben Mendelsohn.
I could see that.
Yeah,
he was the guy from Outsider, right? He was the guy from Outsider, right?
Yeah, it is the guy from The Outsider. He was interested but turned it down because they couldn't agree with salary. He wanted more money, and they said no.
Well, you know, he just came off of Captain Marvel and probably, or you know, all that stuff because he's the Skrull or whatever. So.
Right. And then Poulter turned it down with scheduling conflicts, as I mentioned. And then Skarsgård got it afterwards, but he auditioned. And Muschietti wants to say that he was not necessarily the fourth choice because once Andy Muschietti saw that audition, he basically offered him the role and said, "You're it." You know, he I think was like kind of blown away by his performance. And you know, he can really make his eyes do that. That's not special effects.
What, turn gold?
No, I love that though. I love how they glow because of the deadlights. But no, one of his eyes will go off to the side.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When he rolls them. Yeah. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he like really freaked out Bill. Hey, what's his name? Bill that played
Bill Hader.
Bill Hader. He kind of freaked him out doing it one day. Other people were rumored to play Pennywise, and these are strictly rumors. Johnny Depp.
No.
I don't know, man. Johnny's pretty good. Tilda Swinton.
Interesting thought.
That is interesting. Richard Armitage, Tom Hiddleston.
No.
Jackie Earle Haley. No. Jim Carrey, no. He would be way over the top. Kirk Avocado, Willem Dafoe, Paul Giamatti, Doug Jones.
I think that's a lot of rumor.
Yeah, I do too. Doug Jones and Channing Tatum are the last two.
Channing Tatum is perfect. He would just be no, that's a rumor.
Nicholas Hamilton played Henry Bowers. We mentioned how good he is. He also starred in the ill-fated Dark Tower film with Idris Elba. Sorry, dude. You might have just ruined your career with that one.
Yeah. That one probably wasn't a good choice.
Jake Sim played Belch Huggin, Logan Thompson, Victor Chris, and then, as I mentioned, Owen Teague played Patrick Hochstetter, also played Harold Lauder in The Stand. The only other news I have about cast, as far as the fact that all these kids are absolutely magnificent, is that John Oliver was such a fan of the novel that he was cast as an extra in this film in the town's diner. I did not catch that.
Really? I'll have to go back and see that.
That's what I was thinking.
I did not know that at all.
As far as awards, there are wins and nominations across the board for this, especially on the circuit awards. The iHorror Awards gave it a win for director and feature horror film, and Bill Skarsgård as actor. Our friends at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror nominated it for Best Horror Film, Best Supporting Actor, Skarsgård, Best Performance by a Younger Actor, Sophia Lillis, and for Makeup. And the makeup is really good in this.
Yes.
I think. It's the second movie I'm less of a fan of. We'll get to that. Yeah. And that's all I have. It is not on the 100 or 1001 movies you must see before you die list. Neither one of these films are. I disagree with the first. I think the first one should be on there. Maybe not. I would agree.
One. I think it wouldn't be my top 10% of my list of what has to be, but it would be up there. Yeah. I definitely think it's worthy of being up there. I'm just double checking. I did have one trivia note off of it, which was this was a Bill Skarsgård thing. They were shooting the scene with Georgie in the sewer and everything else. And as they were shooting it and doing it and everything else, he noticed that the actor playing Georgie, I can't remember his name. He's got like 3 names.
Yeah, I looked it up once. I can't think of his name either.
Wait, hold on. I think I've got it written down here in my trivia. Let me find it. Look at that.
He's not in the movie very long.
Yeah, Jackson Robert Scott. But he noticed that he really froze up at one point and everything else. And Skarsgård got really concerned. So when they finished the edit or the cut and everything else, he kind of went over to him and said, I hope I didn't bother you or anything else or disturb you. Are you okay? And his comment back to Bill Skarsgård was, I really like what you're doing with the character.
Yeah, I saw that.
He wasn't scared at all. And
he wasn't scared at all.
That is so good.
Right.
It is so good,
I just lost my train of thought. I'll just move on. The director, Andrew Machete, this may be something you're interested in. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but apparently there was tons of extra footage from both films. And he swears one day that he is going to do a mega cut of the film that will be similar to the novel, where it does go back and forth in time.
Good. That would be
I would think that would be a arduous task.
Well, I think it would be, it would definitely take some time, effort, and talent to be able to do it. But I also heard or read that he is using some footage that he shot for the prequel, Welcome to Derry, whatever.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is if some of the Welcome to Derry stuff may have taken place of that concept. I don't know.
Well, but a lot of that is just going to be early Pennywise stuff.
It's supposed to be like a prequel, I think.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. It's a prequel, so it's because I remember in some of my research, because I didn't do a lot of research on both of these because I wanted to just kind of feel them out and experience them, but I did see that there was a scene that was cut that was really, really, they said it probably would have gotten them an X rating because it was set in like the 1600s, and it was Skarsgård playing Pennywise before he became, I guess, Pennywise. Anyway, but Pennywise basically eats a baby in it. He talks to a woman and threatens her entire family unless she gives up her child to him. kind of thing. And they said it was very graphic. It was very disturbing.
Please don't eat the
they're
baby.
glad they cut it. Please don't eat my baby. But they're glad they cut it. But then it's also rumored that then that could be in the Welcome to Derry, because it is a prequel time.
Yeah, and if it's direct streaming, they don't have to worry about the ratings, probably.
Yeah. I do have in my notes, so this is the third freaking movie we've covered with big spiders. So let's just stop the big spider stuff, because there's a lot of big spiders. Worse than clowns are big spiders.
He doesn't turn into a spider until the second movie, though.
But no, he does in this one. At the end, he's still got the clicky clacky legs.
Oh, remember? Maybe I'm confusing the films. I may be. Okay. Interesting. It definitely, it's more crab-like, though. It's got pinchers.
This one's more crab.
Right.
The second one is a little bit more spider, but not a lot, because they keep Pennywise face.
I have a few other trivias. Alongside Randall Flagg, this is regarded as the most evil and popular of Stephen King's villains. Wizard magazine ranked Pennywise as the 15th greatest villain of all time.
Wow.
Bill, of course, played Pennywise, and his brother Alexander played Randall Flagg in the new version of The Stand. So both brothers have played the two most popular Stephen King villains of all time.
There you go. Well,
that's
those
pretty neat.
Guards, those Skarsgårds, they got a whole legacy happening.
I'm a big fan. I've always been a fan of Stellan Skarsgård, their father, and Alexander Skarsgård came along over 10 years ago in True Blood. But I have to say, watching Bill, he may be my favorite of all three of them, because he is really, really talented.
I want to see him play something different and see.
Watch Barbarian.
But okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For real.
I will.
No. He's great in it.
I'll do it.
What else? The teeth that he had to wear as Pennywise made him drool. And they just said, "Oh yeah, that's great. Just leave it."
Yeah.
So he's constantly drooling for real because of the prosthetic he has in his mouth,
which works.
The trailer for this film enraged real-life professional clowns who stated that Pennywise's character will encourage people to think clowns are scary and murderous. I wonder where they got that idea.
Yeah, covering their tracks. That's what they're doing there. That's the evil clown Illuminati trying to say, "Oh, we're not this way, really." Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Though the filmmakers and actors have said clearly that Pennywise is not a clown, but a representation of pure evil who takes that form.
Because it's scary. Yeah, that's
but anyway, the group rallied to defend the good name in general of clowns in the U.S. And, well, so be it. The clowns got mad.
Yeah, okay. Oh, just think about it. Oh, Pennywise is a spider, the creature from the Black Lagoon, a werewolf, and a clown. Yeah, see a pattern there. Scary things.
Have I ever told you about that song by Alice Cooper called "The Clowns Will Eat Me"?
See, he had a vision. That was probably true.
Yeah, it wasn't one of his better songs. Okay, keys.
I've got a few for this one and a few more for the next one, of course.
I've got more for this one too. I think we'll do less on the second film anyway. So
okay. Of course, you've got the novel, which is my first one. That's a huge key and influence on this. I've also got that the Three Billy Goats Gruff was an influence on it. In other words, King, in his inspiration, said, that's where I had the idea of, going over the bridge, who's trampling on my bridge kind of thing, of an evil underneath the town.
Mm-hmm.
I have.
Go
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the way he edits this is masterful to me, with each of the kids having their own specific scary moment by themselves. And that's very much like the book. And in
Yes.
this one, to me, they're all very Nightmare on Elm Street, where all of a
Yes.
sudden they feel like where they are could potentially not be right. Something is going on, like the library and the balloon, or what have you, Beverly and the sink, looking down the sink, all of it very Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's great. That's very true. That's a good one. Yeah. I had, and I mentioned it earlier, but I have Something Wicked This Way Comes, the Bradbury novel, and also the Disney movie, of course. Both of them are, this evil carnival coming to town and playing off of your worst fears kind of thing. I also have,
It's a carnival.
Of course, Stand By Me, another King reference, but this is a very Stand By Me sort of feel to it.
The whole rock fight scene. Yeah.
Yeah. And the gathering of the kids together, and we can band together and, work.
And beat the bullies.
Same thing with Goonies. Goonies is the same way to me. I think this came out, well, this movie obviously came out after Goonies.
Right.
But I think so did the miniseries.
The miniseries came out in 90. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Goonies was 80s.
Yeah.
I have The Evil Dead. The whole bathroom scene with Bev is straight out of The Evil Dead.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, you said The Shining with the blood, but I thought of Sam Raimi just pumping blood in Bruce's face. I mean, because that's basically what's happening to her.
Yeah, so let's use Evil Dead for this one and Shining for the second one when she's having her nightmare.
Okay. I have a lot of Stephen King keys. Ironically enough, it is a Stephen King property, so it kind of makes sense that a lot of these would remind us of other Stephen King things. Pet Cemetery. The whole, like when when Bill is having his scary moment and he's chasing Georgie in the raincoat and you just see little flashes of him. That reminds me of Pet Cemetery and Gage running around, the little dead Gage running around the house. But it also, since he's wearing that rain slicker with the hood, it also reminded me of Don't Look Now, that Nicholas Roeg film with, where they're just getting glimpses of the child in the little red hoodie running around Venice.
Yep.
So there's 2 in 1 in that one, Pet Cemetery and Don't Look Now.
I have a key in John Wayne Gacy, of course. An evil clown. I have a key E.T., and that's mostly just a machete thing. There's a lot of them on their bikes in this, down through the streets of town, everywhere else, and always filmed either moving along with them or with the crane moving kind of with them. So it's a very E.T. feel to me.
I have, you mentioned the book, but there is a scene where Pennywise is sort of transforming and they do a shot of his hand and there's like a 3-pronged claw like coming out of the glove that he's wearing. And it looks like the claw on the cover of the novel.
Oh yeah, the kind of
the like reptilian looking claw.
Yeah.
See that. So that's like it's back to the book itself, but it's more of a visual.
I got a key that you may not have gotten, but Paul Verhoeven, especially like RoboCop,
really?
And RoboCop and Starship Troopers, the ads, all of the television stuff in both of the movies with it's fun to play in the sewers, kids, and this kind of it's tongue in cheek, but it's also really creepy and disturbing the way Machete does it. But like that's what the dad's watching. He's watching some kind of kids show where they're all sitting around talking about go play in the sewers
or floating.
Yeah, we're all floating down here, kind of thing.
And I don't know if you noticed, I had the subtitles on, but a lot of times when radios and TVs were on in the background and you didn't even see them, they were saying that shit.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. And to me, that's a very Paul Verhoeven technique of kind of tongue in cheek in the background or just blatantly right in your face as an ad or a commercial, but it's incorporating plot points through it.
Like the kids show that Henry Bauer's father's watching when they're saying, kill him, Henry, kill him. And he stabs him in the neck. Yeah. Yep. Things we've mentioned, the blood in the street reminded me of Jaws. Yep. You mentioned The Shining. Oh, I mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street, but I have another clue to that, and that is just Pennywise and Freddy Krueger are very similar in that they use your worst fear to overcome your, to get you, basically.
Yeah.
I have one other that is actually something I could have mentioned when we were talking about Bill Skarsgård, and it was his influences on ways to play Pennywise. And he said he got inspiration from Nicholson in The Shining, from Alex in A Clockwork Orange, from the Joker in The Dark Knight, and from Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
Well,
I mean,
can't go wrong with those four
powerhouses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that about sums it up. I mean, again, I think this movie's fantastic. But we do have to go on to the sequel.
Yes.
I can describe, well, all right, maybe I should look into a little bit of pre-production before we do that. Same director, same writer, Gary Dauberman. This is the second highest grossing Stephen King film, right behind its predecessor.
Okay.
It is really long. To me, it is too long. It is 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Yes.
About 35 minutes longer than the first one. Both films have a combined running time of over 5 hours, which is over 2 hours longer than the original 1990 miniseries.
Yeah.
So it's a lot longer than if you watch the miniseries from beginning to end.
Yeah, it is freaking long.
It's pretty damn long. If I had to sum up my gripe about this movie, I would use the words more and less. To me, it needs more editing and less CGI.
Please, because less CGI.
The scares in the first film are so much more effective because there's not a lot of CGI, or it's in the dark and well hidden. The CGI in this is over the top and almost times comical, and it makes me mad.
Well, and this, one of the biggest keys I've got for the second part is Sam Raimi. This feels like a Sam Raimi sequel almost.
It's got the humor for sure.
It's got the humor. It's got the self-depreciating humor where we're obviously making a reference to something else, and we're stating that we're making a reference to something else that we hope you get it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of thing. And that was missing in the first one, which was great. It shouldn't be there. Adding it into this, in addition to making it too long, there's 5 principal scenes I know of that go on too long. Edit the scene down. We don't need all of that sort of thing. And it's just, to me, this second one feels a little self-indulgent. It feels like, I wanted, and he's lost to me the menace in the second one. It's more jump scare all the way through.
Yeah. It's like he had such popularity with the first film. Instead of, doubling down and making this equally as good, he felt like he could get away with stuff, I think, including having Peter Bogdanovich and Stephen King in the movie, which both are distracting.
Agreed.
I mean, I do like the Stephen King scene, but the Peter Bogdanovich scene is just a throwaway. I'm like, why is this here? It doesn't belong here at all.
Well, which leads to two of my biggest criticisms is, I remember distinctly the fact that we get a little bit of personal retribution in the novel. And I can't remember. I didn't take a note on it. I'm pretty sure it's in the miniseries as well. but we see Bill's wife and we see Beverly's husband at the end. They come to Derry, and they don't in this. They're two throwaways. So
yeah, Audra is Bill's wife, and she ends up being terrorized by Henry Bowers, I think. And doesn't she become like she's in shock, basically?
Yes.
She's in some form of paralysis, because in the end of the miniseries, Richard Thomas takes her on his bike and gives her a ride to try to bring her out of it, if I remember.
Which happens in the novel.
It is in the novel. Yes, that is not in this at all. Audra is just in that scene with Peter Bogdanovich, and that's it, because she's the actress in the. I do love.
It's kind of a bookend in the miniseries, because we begin with a different murder, not with Georgie's murder.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to John,
and that is in the book.
Audra.
Yeah, the gay couple and all that is in the book.
Okay, wait. Sorry, we're talking about this movie. Sorry, I was talking about the miniseries.
Oh,
but in this one, no, that scene that would be one of my scenes in this.
Okay,
the whole,
and we might as well go to that, because we're right there at it anyway. That is a great scene.
That's a great scene, and the way the characters are played and the way it happens, it's really good. That's a good sequence, and scary. That is the way Pennywise needs to be. You know, you've just been beat up horribly, you're drowning, and you kind of look to the shore and you see a silhouette, and then you see a silhouette with glowy eyes, and all that. That was really good.
Right. The only difference was in the book, I think the boyfriend and the gang actually see Pennywise as well.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. But I love the way they did that scene. It strikes nerves with me being a gay man, because that shit still happens. And I also love that. Yeah. And I love that he wins the prize, and the guy, his boyfriend's making fun of him, and the little girl looks real sad, and they end up giving the little girl the stuffed animal. Mm-hmm. He says, "Thank you for letting me win," which was just really charming, I thought. And then later on, she is the little girl that's killed under the bleachers. Did you recognize her? Yeah.
I did not. So that's brilliant, because that's my second favorite scene in this movie.
The bleacher scene?
The bleachers. It's excellent. It's just so well done, and it's very Georgie-esque. You know, for 2 years since we've seen the last movie, here we are. It's very Georgie-esque in that, you know, isolated. We just see Pennywise's really eyes and mouth only. And it's, come here, finally entice you in. Once I finally can blow on it, make it go away. And then you see the teeth.
And I think there's a scene, and in that scene, I think he pauses again and says nothing very creepy, where he just kind of freezes.
Like he's turned off. Yeah.
Right. It's like a toy that's been turned off. It's very strange the way he does it.
And again, I would love to have seen more of that, and less I'm twisting myself out of a refrigerator and chasing you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I would have liked to see more of this manipulation sort of stuff. The third scene I have is Beverly at home. Beverly revisiting.
That's rough, man. Yeah.
And I know
smacks the hell out of her.
I know why he did. No, this is her scene when she goes back home and there's the old lady there.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the scene between her and her abusive husband, and she leaves.
Oh, that's a good scene, but
it's a great scene. Yeah,
both this scene and the scene in the miniseries are both really good with that sequence. With the domestic abuse. But no, when she goes and visits the old lady, and the old lady is just every now and then saying stuff that you think is odd and weird, and then it's to the point where she's looking at something on the wall and a naked lady walks by in the background, and just creepy. And then when it finally happens, it's gigantic terrible. Old witch, kind of don't know what that is.
No,
but up until then,
yeah,
really good.
And that old lady freezes just like Pennywise, like she stops too.
Yes.
Yeah. That whole scene is fantastic. I totally agree with you. And then they blow it at the end with those CGI. And I'm like,
Yes.
why did you do that? you should have edited that part out and done something creepier.
Or just had her go running toward the door without that big thing chasing her into the other room, which it doesn't do anything either and lets her escape. And I don't understand. Pennywise can bite a kid's arm off or a kid's head off, and it can't get Beverly. That just didn't work to me from a logic standpoint either. The same thing. There's so much in this second one where it's a great scene and it's going good, but then it goes on too freaking long. Like another one of my favorites. I remember loving it in the book, and I loved its placement in the book because it's essentially, to your point, it's the way you liked the kids all getting together. This is the adults.
It's the reunion. At the Chinese
restaurant scene. I love it in the book. I liked it in the miniseries. I like it in this one up until there's sections where they're all telling jokes and laughing and blah, blah. I know why he did it for this, because we've got to establish these older characters and who they are, because
they're remembering.
And they're slowly remembering.
Right.
If we had been intercutting the entire time, we wouldn't have to do that long.
Instead, they have a spider head and a thing joke about, oh, you got to be fucking kidding. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why are you ripping off John Carpenter?
Oh, that's later on. That's when they're in the house.
I thought that was in this scene. Never mind.
No, this scene has the fish with Pennywise heads.
And it's got the little birds popping out of the fortune cookies. The little
fortune cookies, which is from the novel.
I was thinking the spider came out of one. Never mind.
It does. A spider comes out of one.
Okay.
A little bird thing is out of another one. Another one has a great big pterodactyl kind of bird, and it's flying around the room chasing them.
There's a lot more humor in this movie that's unnecessary.
Agreed. And I understand it's Hader, and Hader is really good as Richie, but there's just a lot.
It's not Hader's humor that bothers me. It's like the scene, like at the end of that scene where he's literally, I can't remember who it is, it's literally smashing the table with a chair, and the Chinese waitress comes in and they ask for their check. We'd like
a check, please. Yeah, right. That's Bill Hader.
Oh, well, okay. But the comedy to me was less than the last line. It was just the fact her walking in on that insanity. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And then they cap it off with that.
And again, other ones that are no payoffs, like the kid at the end of that.
It would have been better if they would have been sitting there and none of it had happened.
Correct. She doesn't see anything.
She doesn't see it. Right. That would have worked much better.
Yeah. And that would have been a one shot. He could still have been beating the whole thing with the table and the chair and all that, But then when it cuts to her point of view, they're all just standing there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're all just standing there.
I think that Pennywise is in the room with you in the shape of a dog.
In the shape of a clown dog. But and right after that, they have the scene with the kid. And Hader gets all freaked out because he's talking like Pennywise and and then it turns out to be a fan, and he goes away. But then that kid turns out to be living in Bill's old house.
Yeah, it's a little too convenient.
But even that I could give them, because then Bill goes to save him because he's going to the carnival.
Right.
Because he also follows Bill into the Georgie remember thing, which is where he gets his totem. So that's okay. But then Bill goes to rescue him in the Hall of Mirrors, and that's not scary. And it should have been. That should have been terrifying. Right. And the way he kills the kid should have been scary, but it wasn't. It was just, I'm going to bite him again.
I'm going to bite him in half or whatever. Yeah. Let's talk about those totems.
Okay.
There's no way you're going to find that paper boat in the sewer 27 years later.
No.
There's no fucking way.
Nope.
So that's one gripe I have right there. I could practically do scenes I hate in this movie instead of scenes that I love. I don't like the scene where they're in the funhouse mirror room. That scene bothers me.
I don't like it.
it's claustrophobic, but it's not in a scary way. It's in an irritating way to me.
And they keep using the same gag, which is I'm running toward him and I hit a glass.
Yeah, they do it way too many times. I don't like that scene.
Goes on too long, is not scary, doesn't work.
One scene that I do like that I shouldn't like is the scene with Stephen King, because he makes me laugh. I love it. Some of his throwaway lines. Yeah, I didn't like the ending.
Yeah.
Because that's like one of the biggest gripes of most of his books, especially this book, is I didn't like the ending.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that Bill
you can
sees,
afford it.
Yeah. And Bill sees that he's reading one of his books when he lifts up that paper.
Yeah. Loved it. I thought that was a great little cameo and would have worked had the movie not been as long as it already was.
Totally agree. I don't it's like I said, they could have cut back so much and intensified the same scares from the original that worked, like Pennywise.
Yeah. And what I don't understand is, isn't that Bill's totem? Why did he have to go get Georgie's boat if he has silver?
Oh, the bike. Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot. You're right. So it is the bike.
Why does Bill get two totems and everybody,
and why did Bev have to dig into, I mean, I guess it's okay that she had to dig into that baseboard to find the postcard because she hid it from her dad, but her dad had already found it. Remember?
And ripped it up. Remember, she got it, obviously, and repaired it with tape and hid it.
Okay.
So I liked that. I didn't have a problem with hers. I didn't have a problem with Ben's being the yearbook. That was interesting. I mean, that made sense because that was the only good thing that happened to him that summer other than meeting them. Was Bev signed his yearbook for him.
And Hanlon's was one of the rocks from the rock fight, wasn't it?
One of the rocks from the rock fight. So that made sense too. Of course, then again, even though it was funny at the time and I laughed, it didn't break the tension. It wasn't necessary for Eddie to go, that's not going to burn. That's not going to burn either.
Well, the ritual's not going to work anyway because the Indians all got killed. And Mike neglected to tell them that.
I did like that as a twist. I thought that was pretty good. The fact that Mike just hoped it would work.
It's called, for folks out there that don't remember, it's called Ritual of the Chud. And that is in the book. It's where you basically can go into the world that the creature is from and fight it there. And that's where in the book they see Maturin, the turtle.
Correct.
And that's how
Pennywise and the Deadlights, essentially.
The Deadlights that make up Pennywise. Love that they left the Deadlights in. I think the Deadlights are really creepy. I love the effect they have when they get hypnotized or whatever. It happens to Bev as a child and it happens to Richie as an adult, where they just freeze and their eyes roll up white and they're like just suspended.
And that's a huge Stranger Things key. Huge.
Oh, is it?
Of Beverly floating with the wide eyes, because that is, they did that in the last season of Stranger Things.
But I think that Stranger Things came after, didn't it?
Yeah. I said they did that because of but there's the difference. Bev turns white, her head comes up, almost like I was talking about. Talk to me. And floats up to the Deadlights. Bill Hader's face almost looks like Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, it looks sunken and pulled and everything. It's terrifying, creepy looking. But it looks like his face is morphed. Whereas Bev just looked like she just went into white and, floated up kind of thing.
I like that effect though. That's what I was getting to. It's just that I think that effect's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's what I would call the Deadlight effect.
Again, more editing. Why did we need a triple scare for Ben? Why do we need Ben scared of Pennywise's shadow, which turns out to be Bev, and then Bev's hair bursts into flames, and then I have to hide in the closet, in the locker, and then Pennywise comes again. I mean, it's just that whole scene goes on way too long.
I like the idea of the flaming head, though, because of the poem he wrote. Your hair is burning.
Yeah, I would have just done that, though.
Yeah.
Just done that. That's enough.
That's
I don't
enough,
need to now run
it's
to my
creepy as
closet,
hell. Yeah.
to my locker, get in my locker, find the thing. Pennywise jumps in. I jump out. The janitor saves me. It just all that.
Otherwise, it's just more CGI and we don't need it. Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. So we've done scenes, probably enough, wouldn't you say? What
yeah.
They find that fort out in the woods that's underground that apparently Ben had built, but that's never in the first movie. So I thought that was kind of odd, didn't you?
Yep. Totally odd. I think
it was like, why wouldn't they have that fort to begin with? Why didn't we see that in the first film? It must have got cut.
Yeah, because you definitely get the impression that after they cut their hands and leave the circle in the first one, they don't spend any time together after that. And so when did Ben build the fort? Because also they've thrown in that thing which is not in the novel, not in the miniseries, but is in the first movie of they have the fight and separate for at least a few weeks, it looks like.
Well, you find out it's a few weeks in the second film. They describe it as being longer in the second film, but it's when Richie and Bill get in a fight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it almost comes to blows. Bill stays with, I think Bill and Bev are the only two that kind of keep in contact. The rest of the gang kind of drifts apart.
And if I remember the book and the miniseries, the older Henry Bowers was committed.
He was
for killing his father and everything else. And
I don't remember him falling down that well in that first movie.
He did.
I don't remember that from the book at all.
No. But
that would kill you. I assumed that Pennywise resurrected him. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You would have a bunch of broken bones if you were alive.
Yeah, and they get out of that because in the teaser before the credits crawl, you see his body float in the water and he wakes up.
Yeah. Pennywise wakes him up and then he gets arrested for murdering his father.
Right. Yeah,
that should have been in the first movie. For some reason, it didn't make the first movie and ended up in the second movie. I don't know. Yeah. I guess there was no
probably
placement
pacing
for
at the end.
Yeah, that's what I'm figuring.
But then in the novel, in the miniseries, Pennywise comes to him through the moon, talking to him, and through the
and he's in his cell, isn't he?
And he's in his cell.
It's very much like The Stand when he lets the guy out of where Randall Flagg lets I can't think of the guy's name out of prison, and he becomes his devoted henchman.
Yeah, not Trash Can Man, but the other guy.
No, it's not Harold, but I just watched it and I can't remember his name. But yeah,
but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Mel Ferrer played him like in the first movie,
in the first series.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that, and he slowly escapes, then gets to Derry and becomes the physical manifestation of, he's my familiar who can kill you when I can't, kind of thing. But it's very important in the novel because he's also the one that attacks Audra. He's the one that I think kills Bev's husband or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But in this one, he's suddenly got a zombie henchman who can drive a freaking car.
And it's Patrick Hochstetter. It's the same guy that I was mentioning.
And he's there for like one other scene, and then he's not. I don't understand. I didn't get any of that.
Yeah.
Nor did it make a real difference. I don't think Bauer's impact was as powerful as it was in
the other incarnations.
The other incarnations. So,
I agree. I totally agree. The adult Bauer. I was in the shower this morning, of course, thinking. I don't remember when Bowers disappears in this movie. I remember that Ben stabs him, doesn't he? Somebody stabs him through a shower curtain.
Yeah.
Who is
Eddie? He
Eddie?
stabs
Okay, it's
Eddie in the face. Eddie
and he takes the knife
into
out.
The shower, stabs him. He falls out a window. And
then he gets up, pulls the knife out and the shower curtain away and leaves. Is that the last time we see him?
I think so.
I was going to say, what happened? What happened to his character?
I don't know. That's why I said the whole last part of this is such a mishmash and doesn't work for me. It goes on way too long. I mean, they have to go through the Neibold house. They have to go down to the basement. They have to get in the well. They have to go down the well, get in the sewers. In the sewers, they have to make their way to the opening. They do
go
the
to the
ritual of
asteroid,
Chud,
the original impact from the asteroid or whatever.
but that's after they have to go to the ritual of Chud. They open up the staircase, the trap door. They go down the tunnel of the trap door, through a cave, through a little slit cave kind of thing, into where the asteroid is.
Right.
And I'm like, damn, that took a long time.
I was just bored hearing you describe it.
Yeah. And suddenly the deadlights are going, everything is collapsing, blowing up and everything, and we got to go back that way. There's no shortcut or something that we can just suddenly be there, because we have to be there to see the Neibold house be pulled into the abyss, like the end of Poltergeist. I just didn't understand that at all. I don't understand why Bill has this entire sequence where he has to face his own guilt over faking sick that day, and that's how Georgie got killed, yet nobody else has to face any guilt or issues or problems. Why does Bill have his own sequence where he does that?
Because it's McAvoy. He needed more lines. I don't know. I really don't know. Like I said, this movie just kind of falls apart for me, and it's a shame because it's a great cast too.
It is, and I've got in my notes, huge in block letters, top-notch casting.
Yeah.
This is some great casting. Probably the weakest one in there at all to me is Bowers, older Bowers.
The older
and
Bowers,
he's okay.
Yeah. He's all right.
He's okay. He would work in, Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Well, I guess since we're on cast, we'll just go there.
Yeah.
Jessica Chastain, who I just watched play Tammy Wynette, she's fantastic. Plays Beverly Marsh. Lots of people were up for this part. I mean, no one was up for the originals because they were kids, but now that this movie was really, really popular, lots of people were up for these parts. Amanda Seyfried, Gina Rodriguez, Jenny Slate, Awkwafina, Bryce Dallas Howard, Karen Gillian, and Anna Kendrick were all considered for this role. I think Jessica Chastain nailed it.
She's the best. She's the hands down one of the best.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone else there that would have done better. Bryce Dallas Howard looks a little like her because she has red hair, but I don't think she's as strong an actress as Jessica Chastain.
Agreed.
Yeah, she's not.
Agreed.
James McAvoy got the role because I think it was Jessica Chastain had just done an X-Men movie or something with him and recommended him. She had done something with him and recommended him. And he's great as Bill, I think, even though he's British, you can't tell. He had some challenging competition, including Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Oh my God.
Chris Pratt, who might have worked. Ryan Reynolds, Russell Brand. Russell Brand? Really?
No.
James Corden? Really?
No.
Zac Efron, Daniel Radcliffe, Matt Lucas, Ashton Kutcher, Will Ferrell? Really? Sean Hayes? Really? Danny DeVito?
Are they thinking about Bill or is that Richie?
No. Well, you know
Why
what?
are there so many freaking comedians in this?
You know what? You're right. I bet you some of these were considered for Richie, but they were listed as considered for Bill. I bet they got that. I bet that's fucked up because Danny DeVito's next. Seth Rogen, Eddie Izzard, and David Tennant. So
all of those are now.
Some
David
of them
Tennant,
are comic for sure. That's
David Tennant. I could have seen as Bill, and I could have seen Radcliffe as Bill. He might have been a good Bill. I think McAvoy is really, really strong.
I think Chris Pratt would have probably been okay too. But some of those other people that no
but
way.
I could have seen Chris Pratt play the Ben character the way they did Ben.
Oh yeah. Actually, you're right. Chris Pratt would have made a better Ben. But the guy that cast, and I'll get to him, reminds me of oh my God, who is it that's married to Barbara Streisand that has a son that's played Thanos?
Josh Brolin?
Josh Brolin. That guy that plays Ben reminds me of Josh Brolin.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a key to him.
A key to him. As you mentioned, Bill Hader played Richie Tozier. Other people considered for the role were Sam Rockwell, who's a great actor. Josh Gad, who is a little too funny.
No.
And Ed Helms, who I just don't see at all, even though he is a comedian.
No.
Mike Hanlon was played by Isaiah Mustafa. Idris Elba expressed interest in playing Mike prior to Mustafa's casting, but he didn't get it.
And he's he's the deodorant guy, right? And he's in all the commercials.
Mustafa?
Yeah.
Is that the same actor? I didn't realize. Are you talking about those Old Spice commercials or whatever?
Yeah, he's the Old Spice guy.
I didn't realize that. Okay, that's funny. How funny.
And now you see a unicorn, and now I'm on a horse.
Oh, that's great. Ben Hanscom was played by Jay Ryan, and like I said, he reminds me a lot of Josh Brolin.
Yeah, I can see that.
Guess what he did before his acting career took off?
He was a basket weaver.
He was a clown.
See?
You're supposed to know these things.
No.
James Ransone played Eddie Kasprak. I thought he was great casting too. Looked just like the kid.
Yeah, he was excellent.
Other people considered were Steve Buscemi. Bill Hader was actually considered for that role as well.
Yep.
And John Leguizamo, which just does not make sense to me at all, were considered for Eddie. Andy Bean played Stanley Uris. We neglected to mention Stanley. He starts this movie off pretty much with a suicide.
Yeah.
He is the one of the losers that does not come back because he's too scared. Then later, he apparently wrote 6 letters before he killed himself. I thought that was kind of stretching it.
That was just, see, that was, and I've got that in my notes. What the hell's up with this justification letter at the end?
Right. Will Forte was considered for that role. What is this SNL casting, man? It's like, let's get all these Saturday Night Live people.
Yeah.
Jason Lee was considered. Jason Lee, of course, did Dreamcatcher, another Stephen King movie. Justin Long, who I just mentioned in Barbarian. Bill Hader was also considered for Stanley. So they were talking about Bill Hader for 3 different people in this. Patton Oswalt and Jack Black were also considered for Stan Uris. I don't get a lot of these. I don't know. I mean, whoever casted this movie and the first movie was brilliant, but these people that were up for these roles, I'm like, really? I don't get it. At least you picked the right
that may
ones.
be that, like you said, half rumor, half just, they were considered, but then we said no or whatever.
Or they said, I love this movie. I want to be in it. Yeah. Bill Skarsgård returns as Pennywise. I mentioned that he only had 4 minutes of film in the first movie. In this one, he only has 7. And he's, again, probably the best thing in
dialogue, right?
Dialogue.
Not of actually presence in the movie.
Dialogue. Yeah, dialogue.
Yeah, because I mean, he's in the last, 45 freaking minutes of that fight with he's the
CGI version of him and the spider or whatever. Yeah. And then Teach Grant played Henry Bowers. Not very good. Stephen King, of course, was himself, or not himself, but played the shopkeeper. And Peter Bogdanovich, who I may have in my notes later on, was a big fan of the original and wanted to have a part in the second one. So that's why he's in there in that throwaway scene at the beginning.
Okay.
Awards, Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror gave Bill Hader a win for him playing Richie Tozier, and they nominated the film for makeup, effects, and best horror film. Again, neither of these movies are on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list. I totally agree with this one not being on there. I kind of disagree with the first one. So
agreed.
That's what I have for cast on this one.
This one did make me, because he does it, throughout this one, it made me really regret he didn't take this approach in the first one to going back and forth in time. We would have had Stan's suicide within the first 15 minutes. We would have had all these hooks that would have been so much better. We could have explained a lot more of this evil that's underneath all of this.
But you got to remember, this was probably right at the time, if not shortly before, they started doing these deep series on streaming platforms. Because this would have made a great series. What's that?
Yes, it would have made a great series, a good 10-parter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with with Muschietti as the overdriving factor of it, because I think his eye is great. Or Flanagan, yeah. But even if you didn't, if you wanted to do it as 2-3 hour movies, because you've got enough freaking time, obviously. Then it could have still been done that way. And I think better. I think you could have done it as 2-hour movies, 2 full 2-hour movies, intercut back and forth. So, like you said, maybe eventually he'll have a complete golden restored director's cut or something that actually does that.
Oh yeah, and they can release it on HBO like Justice League.
Sure. Yeah, the Muschietti cut.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Before we get to keys, did you have any trivia? I knew this one would go shorter. That's why I was okay to indulge on the first one.
Like I said, I didn't do a lot of research on this one production wise because I didn't like it as much. Right. I mean, I would honestly say I would watch the miniseries before I would watch this chapter 2 again. That's how much I disliked parts of this one. I think it should go down in history to everyone. If you're going to do blood on film, use whatever recipe they used in this movie, because it is awesome.
Yeah.
It looks like real blood. The color is good. The viscosity works. When that whole bathroom fills up with it, it is so great and so good. But later on, when they're like sliding around in it, or when that one shot when Pennywise turns around and we see him without his makeup and he's talking to, I think it's Beverly, and he's putting on the clown white.
I've got it right here.
Doing it, and then he grabs it and cuts himself to make that is so good.
Yeah.
And to me,
for sure,
that is scarier. And that is scarier than him having Stan's head turn into spider legs and make fun of the Thing.
Right. That was not so bad. I was like, why are you doing this?
And it went on forever. It wasn't just chase around one little shot. It was then climb around the corner, then go into the attic, then go into the roof and jump down on people, and just no. It just did that. No.
Yeah. I only have one thing of trivia. This is the first of 2 Stephen King sequels in 2019. The other one is one we've also covered on this podcast. Do you know what that is?
A sequel? You mean like a reboot?
Sequel.
A sequel.
This is a sequel, and so was the other one. This was a sequel to the It first movie. This is It Chapter 2.
Right.
It's the same year that Dr. Sleep came out.
Dr. Sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my.
Interesting enough, both feature Scottish actors taking lead roles. James McAvoy in this and Ewan McGregor in Dr. Sleep. I thought that was very interesting.
That's kind of cool trivia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Keys. I don't have a lot of keys from this movie. I mean, of course, a lot of the ones that we have from the original movie carry over, but you said you did.
Well, no, I've got a few. I've got, and a lot of them are just the references that they made. The Thing, of course, not only just the head, but he even says, "You got to be fucking kidding me."
I know, it was a direct ripoff. Yeah, it was supposed to be homage, but it felt like a ripoff.
Yeah, and several of those movie ones, like Here's Johnny, is in there. Yippee-ki-yay, Mother, and then he gets taken up is in there. But the 2 I have principal are Sam Raimi, like I said, because this feels like very Raimi influenced. The amount of humor in it.
I agree. It does.
Even when they're trying to do a serious scene and then they comic out of it, like when he's trying to get Eddie to fight, Eddie's saying, I can't go do it. I can't go do it. And, and Richie says, hey, who fought him when he was 14 years old? Me. Who did this? And me.
He says, who stabbed Henry Bowers through a shower curtain with a knife that was just in his cheek? Yeah.
Me. And then, who married a woman twice his body mass? Why did you have the punchline? You didn't need that kind of thing. That's a very Sam Raimi thing to me. But
right. I mean, they're trying to make Richie still funny, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah. And he was. Oh, I also have in my notes, though, it would be interesting to take both these movies and count the number of times the word fuck is said.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I didn't copy that note, but it was on IMDb because even with kids, they say it a lot. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It very, very interesting. I've got, why is there so much humor in this? It's several notes, but anyway,
I didn't mention it in casting, but did I tell you that or did you know that the woman that played Eddie Kasparak's mother is the same woman that played his wife? They cast the same girl. Yeah, I thought that's kind of funny. Yeah,
that's kind of good
because she's overbearing too. They're both overbearing.
I have the key in the first one. I didn't mention it, but Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is what supposedly she is suffering from, the malady that she has, which is that, parents who fake and or create diseases in their kids so they can feel more motherly. And it's actually a disease. It's actually a malady. Yeah. But that would be a key to that first one.
My first key is the new series that's coming out. Welcome to Derry, because I'm like, it's going to probably, obviously it's a prequel, but for some reason I felt like it would be more akin to this than the first one. I don't know why.
I hope not, but yes.
Yeah. You mentioned Sam Raimi. I was going to mention Stranger Things.
Yes, again.
But you could do that with both because it is a lot like the Upside Down when they go into the world of Pennywise. You mentioned something that reminded me of yet another Stephen King property, and that is Patrick Hockstetter returns. He's the pyro guy with the hairspray and the lighter. And he gets killed in the first movie as a kid. He ends up on a missing poster, just like the other kids, Betty Ranscombe, all those.
Right.
He comes back and becomes kind of Henry Bowers like chauffeur. And it reminded me of Christine, that dead guy, like, think that was always driving around in the old car. And it's very Christine to me. You don't recognize him as much because he's got all the makeup, but it is the same actor, O&T, playing him.
Okay.
So Christine was another key.
I've got one I took as I was watching, which is Peter Pan. The whole thing of clap if you want, Tinkerbell to come back to life, and they're doing the whole thing about if you believe, you'll see, if you believe, you'll see, or bring the darkness into light, bring the darkness into light. That whole chanting chud ritual that to me, I was so upset by then. I was going, okay, so it's just Peter Pan. If we believe it, he'll come back, kind of thing.
Let me ask you this. Was Richie gay in the novel? I don't remember that.
No.
Okay.
No.
I liked it. It didn't bother me. And I liked that the Eddie, the Richie, I like that he was carving his initials with Eddie's in that bench or near the bridge. I liked that touch. I don't know that it was in the book at all.
No, it was not, as far as I remember, at all in the book. I do like the fact that's one of the strong points, I think, of this particular one, chapter 2, in that they don't belabor it, but it's there, obviously. Yeah. And it's a huge revelation about Richie. And good and well done and strong and makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I thought it was good too. But that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. I don't really have any other keys that I can think of.
The only other key I have is poltergeist, but I don't know why I have it in there.
Oh,
other than just
when they're swimming around in the the sewer and the dead bodies.
No, it's the Ben Bev final attack, which made no sense. And Ben is being buried by the dirt and she's being drowned in the blood.
Oh, and she has to reach out and they do that whole upside down Stranger Things thing again.
Yep.
Yeah. With the camera angle. Yeah.
Save each other for some reason. And we don't really know why. And
yeah. Cause it does feel like they're going to die. I really got the impression, they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again, I'm just the last like 30 minutes of this movie is so convoluted and just doesn't work with the overall through line. Even being able to defeat Pennywise the way they defeat him,
right,
doesn't work. Because the big thing. I think the big thing. The big thing in the miniseries. Yes, I'm not sure if it's in the book. Was that they don't believe in him anymore, and that's what kills the Deadlights. Is they're not afraid of him anymore, and he doesn't scare them, and they see him for what he is. In this one, it's sort of like that. He regresses, and they just see him as a real small thing that they have to rip his heart out. I don't get that. I didn't get any of that. So,
I don't mind that ending. It's certainly better than the miniseries ending with the giant spider. I hated that.
Yeah, they just had to kill the spider.
They basically push it over like a Volkswagen. It's stupid. The ending in this one, I like that they're not fearing him, shrunk him. That didn't bother me. And I also don't mind that they ripped his heart out and they all squashed it. That to me worked. I was okay with
I liked that element of it, yes.
And I liked how
I just don't know if it was played enough that that's what created it. Their lack of fear. Yeah.
And, we were talking about this when we did The Devil's Backbone last season, how Guillermo had this wonderful effect. And this was, long time before these movies, of whenever the ghost appeared, his blood misted up. It does that in every killing in this movie, just about everything. Yes. Every time blood comes out of something, it floats up. And even at the end, when he disintegrates, he floats up into pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Stranger Things key as well. With things floating opposite gravity. Even when the skateboard comes down and it's bleeding up. Sort of
it's
thing.
Funny that they mentioned Del Toro being an option for directing these films, because he did that technique before I knew anybody else doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think he would have added a lot more of not the upside down, but the mysticism of Chud and Manchurin and all that would have been in this second half. And
a lot more of the characterization and the intimacy between characters, because he's really good at building story and depth especially with kids. So yeah. Oh well. Yeah. I still like the first film. Second film, meh.
Yeah. And again, I would think everybody who is listening always go back and watch the miniseries and read the novel as well. The original keys of this. That's what Tim and I think. We'd love to know what you guys think. We went long on the podcast, just like Muschietti did in his movie. But we'd love to know what your guys' thoughts. Do you agree with us? Disagree with us? Let us know, please. You can also find us on our website, where you can find all the other episodes that we've had, 6 seasons now of Johnny Has the Keys, and maybe there's another movie that you want to watch or listen to in there. We also, if you might want to consider supporting the podcast, we'd really love to have your help. And you can become a patron at Patreon, and for as little as, a cup of coffee a month sort of thing, and just a few bucks, you can help us keep the show going. But you also get special content then, including upper tiers have 2 other podcasts that we have. One is called the Dilithium Chamber, which is the original series of Star Trek. And we also have X-Files Declassified, which is an examination of the X-Files and all of their spooky sci-fi combo.
And we're almost through the second season of Star Trek. We've done 2 seasons of X-Files, so we've got tons of content over there for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost Christmas time. We're going to be taking a break for a little bit. When are we back? We're back in January. Yes?
You know what? We're going to take 3 weeks off through the new year, and then we will be back on January 8th.
And it's another big movie. It's another departure a little bit for us.
A little bit
this season. We're trying some new stuff this season, so it's a little bit of a departure, but we think
we're
everybody
broadening
will like
the definition of science fiction.
broadening the definition thereof. But Tim, it's been great again. It's been a great year this year. It's going to continue, I hope, into 24.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm loving this season so far.
I am too, and I hope all of you guys out there. We hope all of you guys are out there. If you are or you aren't, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
All right,
Tim. Until next time.
Hey, ho ho ho,
ho. Bye.
Bye.
Can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.